Welcome to this video lesson. Today we're going to be covering the different types of market structures to get you familiar with the four types, which are the main part of Benchmark 5 and a necessary part of understanding all that we're going to talk about in Unit 4. So let's look at our learning targets. We're going to be looking at the level 2 stuff, which is that you can identify the major market structures, including monopolies, oligopolies, polyopolies, and perfect competition. So it's a lot of funny words here. Some you may be familiar with, some you won't, but hopefully by the end of today's lesson, you have a rough idea of what each one is like. So let's start with our first one, which is perfect competition. And this is the ideal market structure. So if we had this, businesses and consumers would have peak efficiency, and this would be the best type of market structure to have. So first off, what you need to know is there are a lot of sellers in perfect competition. In fact, there could be an infinite number of sellers. It could go on and on and on. Now, that being said, even though you have all these different sellers, the products are mostly the same because everyone's going to know roughly what they want to sell. There's not a lot of difference between what's going to be sold in that market. So the products are all the same. It's very easy to start a new business in this market because there's not a lot of barriers. The competition is relatively fair. Information is out there on how to run the business, all of that. So it makes getting into a perfect competition market very, very easy. In perfect competition, price is determined solely by demand. So what people want, people will pay for. There are no guaranteed profits in perfect competition. So what that means is not that businesses won't make money, but they're going to have to adapt as things go along to continue to make money. There's no guarantee built into the system. So some classic examples of perfect competition include fishing and farming. So anyone can really get into the business of fishing or farming. The products that you're going to produce are roughly the same. Corn and wheat are the same whether you grow them one place or another. Fish, the fish you catch and you serve. Yes, there's different types of fish, but fish are fish. You're not going to catch a salmon in one place and the same type of salmon someplace else and be able to market them vastly different. So perfect competition, again, the ideal way because there's lots of choice out there, lots of sellers, there's no barriers to things. So that's what economists believe would be the best way of running things, is letting the market determine what is going on. Now, that's a pretty rare situation. So we have to understand the other market structures that are also in play. The next one is polyopoly, which means many. Poly means many. Some also call this monopolistic competition. That's a big fancy word. So that's why we're staying with polypoly. Remember, a couple of things. First off, number of sellers. There's many of them in this system. I just told you poly means many. So think of this as different brands. So maybe not an infinite number, but not also one or two. We're talking lots of, a couple of different brands that are famous. And as a result, we get different brands with similar products. So for example, clothing people or clothing companies, the clothes are roughly the same. So their shirts, their pants, their shoes, but they all have slightly different tweaks based upon the brand that created them. It's pretty easy to start new businesses here because you can take a product and you can change it a little bit and start getting going. There's no barrier blocking you from getting it. Someone doesn't have total control, that type of thing. Price is determined by demand, but there is some price control in this method. So what that basically means is there's a floor or a ceiling to how much you can charge, and demand has a little bit of control. Demand plays the rest of the role there. There are no guaranteed profits in this system. Businesses, again, like in perfect competition, have to constantly adapt. They have to advertise. They have to go get new customers and keep their old ones. So some examples could be clothing and snack food. So, think of the different clothing brands that we know of. Think of the shoe companies, Nike, Reebok, Adidas, Under Armour, all that. Also think about the snack food area. So one of the things that came to mind immediately was soda. You've got Pepsi, Coke, Dr. Pepper, all the different kinds that are made by grocery stores and things like that. So roughly the same product, slight different tweaks. Everyone's competing. Price is determined by demand with some minimal price control. So we're moving down the spectrum from total competition, perfect competition, to now many sellers, to our next one, which is an oligopoly, which basically means few. Olig means few. And so we're going to be having even more limited number of sellers. So you're going to get a few brands with similar products. You're going to have a hard time getting into this because those people have such control over the market. It's going to be hard to get your business going without being defeated by them. strong price control, especially if the businesses agree to work together. So this is true, for example, in the oil market, where there's a few countries in the world that produce a lot of the oil, and they get together and agree on how much they're going to sell that oil for. Now, another thing to keep in mind is that there are some guaranteed profits in this. Because there's only a certain number of producers, everyone is eventually guaranteed to make a little bit of money as long as you're one of those few producers. Now, a classic example of this is cars. If you think about it, there's not that many car manufacturers for the number of cars in this world. So your Fords, your Chevy, your Toyota, all that, they have control over a certain amount of market. And over the long term, they're going to make some guaranteed money off these selling of these cars. So what we get is a lot of vehicles that are roughly the same, with just small little tweaks that connect back to that brand. Furthermore, think about it this way. It's not going to be really easy if you decided tomorrow to start a car business. You're going to face a lot of challenges to get to a point where you could compete with them. And there are pretty strong price controls. There's not a large amount of difference between the cheapest vehicle that you can buy new and other ones offered by different brands. So this is where we're a little more familiar with. Now, the last one on the spectrum in terms of control is what's known as a monopoly. And mono means one. This is the least favorable to consumers because you just don't have any choice. And in fact, it's so dangerous for economies that many governments have banned monopolies. And we'll talk a little bit about that next week when we get into market failures. But what you need to know is in a monopoly, you have one seller and they have a unique product. So someone else can't produce that product, or it's really, really hard to substitute. It is impossible to break into a monopoly because the company that is currently controlling it has so much control that you will not be able to get in, or they possess a product that you just simply cannot produce. They have total price control. Now, I'm going to give you one little caveat to that. Sometimes the government will be in charge of a monopoly and they will tell the company how much they can charge, but there is total price control. Demand and supply don't really matter. Long-term guaranteed profits here, because you're the only one producing this product that we have to have. You're going to have profits in the long term. Now, the example that I'm going to give you is electricity. So think of it this way. Here in Albert Lea, we don't have choice about who we're going to get our electricity from. It comes from Freeborn Maurer. That's who we have to buy it from. You can't shop around and look for different electric companies to buy your electricity from. Some places it's a similar thing for internet or maybe cable television, garbage collection, things like that. So sometimes those are examples of monopoly where one entity controls something that can't be replaced with something else. So we ran through the four different types: perfect competition, polyopoly, oligopoly, monopoly. And remember that went from the order of most freedom and consumer benefit down to least freedom, least consumer benefit. So we're going to be spending the rest of this benchmark looking at how comparing and contrasting some elements of them, the positives and negatives of these four market structures. And you're going to need to know these market structures to understand what happens when markets fail because of how they're designed.